welcome to Now is the Time. I'm Meri Crouley. You know, sex trafficking, it's a problem that is a $150 billion a year industry. And it affects all over the world people from every demographic that you could imagine. The average age of a victim is 12. On today's program, I have the director and the founder of Million Kids, Opal Singleton. She has literally trained over 250,000 people around the world about what to look for and how to spot somebody who's been trafficked. I am going to be talking to her about a new book too, Societal Shift. It's A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. And so welcome to the program, Opal. Thanks for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell us about the problem of sex trafficking and human trafficking. What do you actually do with Million Kids, the organization that you're the president of?
Okay. Well, I am president and CEO of Million Kids. I'm also the training and outreach coordinator for the Riverside County Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. That's outside of Los Angeles in the Inland Empire. And so I work with real cases. I report to Sergeant Sawyer there, that's ran by the Riverside County Sheriff Department. I report through the Department of Justice. I'm also an instructor at 3 schools at USC where I train law enforcement. I am post-certified, so I'm a law enforcement trainer. I travel across the United States training law enforcement in sex trafficking, labor trafficking, social media exploitation, child pornography, and sextortion. And there is a nexus, as we'll get into, a connection between those subjects. So that's how I ended up training so darn many people. I do it like 18 hours a day. So.
Now, let me ask you a question. How bad is human trafficking and sex trafficking in the United States in particular?
It's a serious matter for many reasons. Human trafficking is the fastest growing crime in America. California is the #1 state. We have twice as many cases as Texas or anybody else. And 3 out of 4 of our victims are U.S. citizens. So while many people think, well, it's a foreign problem, and it absolutely is, it's a problem right here in California, here in America. And it's getting worse because of social media. So that's why I wrote that particular book.
So now the book that I'm holding in my hands, Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. Why did you write this book? Can you tell us a little bit about what's in the book?
Oh, I'd love to. It's an important book. I'll tell you, it is the hardest thing I ever did in my life. As you know, I wrote a previous book, Seduce, The Grooming of America's Teenagers, which is all about the grooming of our kids. But as I began to study this, and as I sat with parents, and I sit with parents who are missing their kids or whose kids are being pushed into prostitution, or they haven't seen them for a year or two, or I sat with kids who are being violated. I really came to understand that the social media exploitation component is like a super highway preparing our kids for sex trafficking. And so while my first book, Seduced, was all about sex trafficking, this is kind of the driving forces of it. And so it really has to do with technology and how they can access our kids.
Do most parents, they're probably not aware just how much access that these predators have to their children?
Right. And you know, Meri, what's interesting about this is that I train in schools. It's amazing how many teachers and principals aren't aware either. This is called A World Without Borders because literally next year, 2020, we are going to have an historical thing. Never happened before. I believe where we're at today in the timeline of history, if you consider your life, where you're at in the timeline of all the things that happened up till here, next year will be one of the most important moments of all time, maybe more important than the Industrial Revolution, because for the first time in history, the entire world will be connected by internet. Right now, there are about 4.7 billion people on the internet, but we're getting 5G and blockchain and all these other technologies. And so what's next year, your kids, the kids that are 14, 15, 16, 17, they will become the leaders of the most important generation that's ever lived, because they will lead the rest of the world into that world that is completely connected. A World Without Borders.
So, Opal, what are some of the ways that these predators are using the social media and the internet to get into the heads and the minds of these kids?
Well, that's why that book's so thick. It is amazing the ways, and it's an important thing for parents to understand it. Teachers, youth ministers, pastors, everybody that connects with kids. There are many new technologies. What is happening is it isn't just that the world is being connected, but in the last 6 months, we've had some advancing technologies that are a real challenge to parents and law enforcement, which is why I wrote that book. Even as law enforcement, we cannot keep your kids safe. Even as a parent, all those filters that you always used, it's reached a level where you cannot keep them safe. Now, we're going to talk about as we go along, what do you do to turn this around? But let me address why you can't keep them safe. You have encrypted messaging. You know, as a parent, you can see the message go in, the message come out, but you can't read that message. You have, and same way with law enforcement. It takes a while to de-encrypt that. We have vaporware. That's the live streaming. Poof, it's gone. You're shooting yourself at a party, and it's over. If you're, as a parent, don't walk in on that, and it's not, saved, you'll never know it happened.
So this is where, and this is what they're doing also on the internet. They'll actually have some type of video that comes up and then it disappears.
Right.
So law
Absolutely.
enforcement can't get them and can't arrest them.
Right. Takes a while to get a search warrant. So, what that means is that your child must be responsible in those decisions in that moment, because it's not retraceable. You can't get it back. Once they send that out there, and see, if your child doesn't save it, you'll never see it, but a pedophile on the other end can save it, and they can sell it in the dark web. So all the responsibility is going to be on the end user. And that's why I wrote this book. I go into schools. I want kids to understand technology is not a bad thing. Okay, we'll talk about this. Technology, I don't believe God has released technology only for evil. There are many, many ways we can teach our kids to use technology responsibly, but it must be a dialogue. Our kids have to understand it's not a game, it's not a toy. It is something that can change your life just like that, and the lives of people around you, quite frankly, your entire family's life. If you send a naked photo to someone out there, and you took that photo in your bedroom, photos have GPS on them. If it goes out there to a pedophile and he sells it into the dark net, you can have 20,000 pedophiles trying to reach your child, and they know where they live. So most parents don't understand that. That's why I wrote the book. Most kids don't understand it until you talk to them about it.
Well, this is actually really scary. So actually, you take a picture, an image,
Yes.
And you send it out, and they actually know where the child lives?
Absolutely, and this is why we need to educate parents and leaders on this. This has been true for a very long time, but this is the reason why you have all these sextortion rings. I have a whole chapter in that book called Crowdsourcing, where there's a whole ring. So sometimes a kid won't realize it. They think they're talking to a girlfriend in a video game chat room, and it's all kind of cool. They won't realize they're talking to 8 or 9 different pedophiles that are feeding them information. And it's all about luring in a naked photo or a sexual photo and getting them to test the waters. Once they've sent that first photo, then it's out there and your lives can change forever. We have had cases where families have had to move because pedophiles were literally hounding them for more photos, and they knew where they lived so they could come over.
You know, Opal, I know we've had interviews before. When a parent gives their child a smartphone,
Right.
you have told me that literally they're opening themselves up to 5 million pedophiles?
Oh, yeah, easily, and it's going to get even bigger. You see, it's an interesting thing. A world without borders for our kids this next year will be a world without borders for pedophiles, for pimps, for predators, for cartels, for organized crime. And it's kind of like parents put this kind of, well, they won't get my kid, except we are putting a generation of kids in a world without borders. Those guys aren't going to go away. it just opens the access. So we have to prepare. It's like this great societal experiment. And sometimes I about crack my mind at night. I go, why aren't people hearing this? It's like this great societal experiment. Our kids are the first to test out technology. They're technology wizards. And mom and dad are running along behind, and they're technophobic, and some are techno-impotent, quite frankly, and they're going, you be careful on that now. And there's this disparity as our kids try all this up first, and the parents are going, oh, he's on that thing again. And they don't understand the world they're living in. Yeah, the book is scary. I don't disagree. But we must get our head out of the sand as Christians. I believe parenting is the greatest mission of all time for this generation.
Well, in Opal, I've been working on a 6-part series and a documentary on sex trafficking called Freedom Cry for the last year and a half. And it's interesting because I'll talk to people and I'll tell them the statistics about in the United States about, just how bad it is. And it's almost like they have their head in the sand and they don't want to know. It's like they just want to put the hand over their ears like la, 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 la. But it's not going to go away. Right. And we're not trying to be fear mongers here. We're not trying to scare people. But on the other hand, we have to wake up because this has gone to a new level.
That's right.
And we've got to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and we're just getting started. That's the reason why this is scary. But once you understand it, you can begin to craft a strategy. It's when you're pretending this isn't happening that you're really in trouble, or you're pretending that it isn't happening with your kids that you're really in trouble. We must acknowledge it, and then there are ways that we can take this on. But I believe, exactly like you're saying, is that most parents are oblivious. And we must change that. And it's not that hard to change in there. But you have to make a conscious decision. Oh my gosh, this is happening. I'm going to take this on.
So what age does a parent start talking to their child about the internet and about this subject?
Well, that's a fascinating question, Meri. I'll tell you why. You see parents handing 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds devices that are connected to the internet. And you look at that and you go, you're not going to get that device back from that child once they start into it. And you say to yourself, that is an adult device. It's connected to the entire world. And that means the minute you hand that device, even at 2, 3, 4, you have a challenge. At the very least, I tell a parent, never give a child a smartphone until you've had a sex talk with them. And if they're not old enough to have a sex talk, don't give them a phone, because literally, as we covered in Seduced, these people are going to educate your child on matters like morality, spirituality, sexuality, things that were once the Holy Grail for a parent. And now, the minute you hand them a smartphone, total strangers can talk to your kids about things that were the Holy Grail to you before this. So the real challenge is look at your life. Does your child have cognitive reasoning? I had an incident. My 10-year-old granddaughter came to visit me. And there's a divorce situation. So the father had given the daughter a phone. I'm looking at him saying, how much cognitive reasoning does she have? Would you take this girl down to a bar and just kind of leave her off, or a strip club and leave her off? Because once you put a child, for instance, in a video game chat room that's open to the public or on these public apps, you're kind of leaving your child off in a strip club. So does she have enough reasoning to do this? This is, and she was a smart girl. Man, this is my granddaughter. I'm very impressed, But the very first thing she did is she goes, oh, no, Grandma, I'm really, really careful on here. And then she goes, is it okay if I play on TikTok? TikTok? Are you serious? That is open to the whole public. You're available, vulnerable, and you want to be liked. And she's 10. Now, how much judgment will she have when someone tells her she's pretty or cute and she wants to be friends?
Well, those of you watching here, there is a spiritual epidemic happening here. I believe that we're in a time that God is going to bring a great wave of his glory, but this is going to come from within. It's like we're going to have eyes of honor. So Opal, this question, So what do we need to do to train our children? What do the parents need to do? You had mentioned earlier when we were chatting before the show about training up leaders.
Right. Well, the first step is to train the parents so they understand, and we'll talk about that some more. But the way I approach this is that I think it's important to sit down with your child and go, you are the most important generation that'll ever live because you're the leaders of this generation, okay? And so I'm going to buy phones, but they're my phones because I pay for them. But I believe in you, and I believe that you are going to be a leader. And I'm going to do everything I can to work together with you so that you are the leader of the next generation. But it is my phone, so, you know, from time to time I check my phone. If I ever see you not being a leader, well, I'm going to pull it back until you're ready to be a leader. But in the meantime, every app you get, I'm going to understand because you're going to teach me. You know, you're a genius at this. You're a wizard. It just comes natural. And I'm kind of an old fogey. Doesn't come natural. But it's going to if you're going to have it because I care about you. But more important, you have younger brothers and sisters. This is an adult device. That's why I'm trusting you with it. So I'm going to ask you for us to start to come up with ways that we can use technology to glorify God, to improve ourselves. Do you know that you can literally make cyber missionaries of this generation? You know, your youth group is raising money for a well in Kenya. Okay, live stream over to Kenya, watch them build that well, and meet the kids as they're doing that. That's a healthy way to do that. You have Christian music. Use that for foster homes and group homes and kids who don't have access to the stuff you have. Do you know that the poorest child in the entire world can get a Harvard-style education for free if they decide to do that by using the internet? So let's make up some programs where maybe we teach kids in Cambodia English through live streaming. And at the meantime, we can collaborate, and we do it as a group where we're safe, but we can use technology in ways that empower us as people and glorify God. But the minute you're on there in some of those video games and they're asking for a naked photo, you must know that's not going to glorify God. More important, you're going to get in trouble. And so you begin to work with them. The parent must engage in the activity. I'll take this a step farther. There are many of these video games have lots of sex in them. We'll talk about some of this next. It's amazing how much sex is in them. And, you know, if a father saw his 12-year-old son talking to a prostitute, he'd go, hey, son, let's talk. When, you know, we have mom, sister, we respect women. That same father walked right by a video game and his kid's playing on it, and he may be paying money to have sex with the prostitute and killing her so he gets his money back so he didn't lose his score. And that same father will walk right by there and go, it's on that thing again. And, you know, I'm saying if your son, especially, is not over 15, doesn't have adult reasoning, get yourself an avatar, Dad. You know, even if you're lousy, you know, and if you don't know what an avatar is, let me teach you. You know, that's a character. And you go in there and you play the game with your son and go, son, is that a cop we just killed? Because we don't kill cops in our family. You know, son, are we talking to a prostitute here? Hey, let's shut this up. Hey, son, who are we talking to in that room?
So now you're talking about, and this is a pretty well-known video that you're talking about, where they can literally buy a prostitute, kill a prostitute.
Oh, yeah.
What is the name of that video?
It's Grand Theft Auto, but there are many more that are like it. It's an interesting thing. In fact, I'd really like to take that further in our conversation, because I'm going to tell you God is weighing on my heart on that subject. For some time, I've been very concerned about the amount of sex combined with violence. I think of... I can't think of his name now, but a famous criminal that killed a lot of people, serial killer. He remembered that, Ted Bundy, he remembered the day he combined sex and violence. Sex and violence is all through our video games. Game of War, I had a 14-year-old kid go, that game is really raunchy. And I said, you giving it up? And he goes, no. And I go, is it really bad? He goes, it's really bad. I said, are you addicted? He said, yeah, he's 14. What's it going to be like when he's 16 or 18 or a father or a husband? But what's happening, Meri, is that we have moved into video game character pornography. And I just discovered this. It's just hot off the record. By the way, if you want to learn about all this, follow Million Kids on Facebook. We'll talk about Million Kids later and how you can do that. But just go to Facebook, find Million Kids, and you'll see this stuff in there. Pornhub, the largest porn site in the world, and there's millions of sites, they literally determined in their top 10 searches, 6 of them are now video game characters. It's animated pornography. Our kids consider that it's not sex. It's not real. It's animation. It's art. But think about what that means. You can go from A to Z in animated pornography.
Well, we only have about 5 minutes left, Opal, for this program. But, you have a radio show that you have weekly, and that you also said that you have a site they can go to learn a lot of this information that you're talking about.
Right.
What is that website they can go to?
The organization is Million Kids, MILLION, not 1 million, not a million, just millionkids.org. That's the one site. Follow Facebook and find Million Kids and hit like. The other site that you talked about is called exploitedcrimes.com, exploitedcrimes.com, and there's over 110 hours of free human trafficking and sextortion type training on that. But they really, really want to get educated. They can go to millionkids.org and buy the book Seduced or buy the book Societal Shift, and we actually have a package deal in there, and it will really, really educate and open up their minds.
Well, we just have a couple minutes left. For you, those of you watching, like I said, this problem is growing exponentially, and we need a spiritual awakening. We need the Holy Spirit and the Lord to come down into our culture and literally clean it up.
Yes.
Because it's got to deal with our hearts.
Right.
And so just, last closing statements here. What would you want to say to the people? In fact, look right at the screen and tell like you're talking to a parent.
Get involved, Mom and Dad. Educate yourself. Buy the books. Get involved. Understand. Follow us on Facebook. Once you start to understand what it means to be a world without borders and a home without walls, then you will be a much stronger parent. By the way, it's a home without walls because 87% of kids sleep with their phone. At 3 in the morning, then in their underwear, that pedophile comes right through the sheets, can reach your kid. A parent must get involved and get educated and start to understand this is the most important generation that's ever happened and the most important generation for parenting. And I'd invite you to educate yourself and get involved.
Well, thank you for coming on the program today, Opal. And thank you for watching Now is the Time. You can get her book, Societal Shift. I've got it in my hands. Right now you can see it on the screen. Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. And it's $18.95. I think she said there's a package deal that's on the website. You can go right to millionkids.org and get that. I would recommend it highly. But right now, I just want you to know in closing out, I'm going to say a prayer right now because, sometimes you listen to this and it almost seems almost overwhelming.
Right.
Like, what can we do? Well, let me tell you, God is getting ready to break through this stuff. And we've got warriors on the front lines like Opal that really has to know all this stuff. She doesn't probably want to know it, but God has put her in this case, in this place, that she's literally training thousands around the world of what to look for. But it's almost like the Tower of Babylon. The Tower of Babel has been opened up where the whole world is being connected, as she said, next year in 2020. So we just pray for you that God will give you the spirit of wisdom and the understanding in the Holy Spirit that you're going to know, that the Holy Spirit's going to tell you what's going on and that your children are going to have eyes of honor and hearts that will be, really shielded from this kind of things. Because if God be for us, who can be against us?
Yes.
So anyway, I want you, if you really enjoyed the program, you can also go to my website at mericrouley.com. That's mericrouley.com. You can make a donation to the website because it does take finances to bring forth this content around the world, as well as making this documentary and series that we're right in the midst of at this point. But thanks for watching Now is the Time. Now is the time for us to take control of our children's lives, to teach them and educate them to be leaders, and that we're going to make a difference with technology instead of letting the enemy or Satan try to take over our kids and seduce them. We're going to take back what God has given to us to infiltrate the world with his justice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.